in conversation with Tricia Copeland. Tricia Copeland believes in finding magic. She thinks magic infuses every aspect of our lives, whether it is the magic of falling in love, discovering a new passion, a beautiful sunset, or a book that transports us to another world. An avid runner and Georgia native, Tricia now lives with her family and four-legged friends in Colorado. Find all our titles from contemporary romance and fantasy to dystopian fiction at www.triciacopeland.com. And on today's episode of Auto Interview, it's my utmost pleasure and joy to have on the show today Tricia Copeland. How are you doing, Tricia?
Doing great, Peter. How are you?
I'm doing fine too. It's lovely to have you on the show today. I'm quite excited, really.
Thanks. Excited to be
Yeah.
here.
Absolutely, yeah. So Tricia, I'm intrigued by your large bodies of works, and I would like us to start a conversation and the interview with To Be a Fake Queen, which is the first book in the Ram Chronicles series. Now, could you briefly tell us about the making of To Be a Fake Queen?
Sure. Yeah. To Be a Fake Queen has an interesting origin story, I guess. I was challenged to write a short story with the main character who had or struggled with a mental illness, and it needed to be a Z story. So there was a group that wanted to have an anthology, a couple of different authors with short stories, all with fantasy characters who struggled with mental illness. So I saw an image of I'd never written fairies before, never researched fairies, never knew anything about fairies. I mean, except, the few things that I'd seen in, Peter Pan or those types of fairies, but Shakespeare a little bit. So I created the story about, I saw an image of a fairy, and that kind of inspired me to write about a fairy who had anxiety problems.
Wow.
She was a princess, and her three brothers had been killed in a battle, and she struggled with anxiety and panic attacks and things like that. But at age 15, her father decides to make her sole monarch, and there's never been a female monarch in the Fae realm, and she's only 15 years old. So, and she has this anxiety panic attack problem. So that's the short story I created, and the anthology was never published. But when I came back to her character, I didn't want it to end there. Like, I didn't want her story to end there. I wanted to expand that story. And I weaved her story a little bit in with the sister series, which is, or brother series, which is the Kingdom Journals, which is a story about witches and vampires. So she starred in that series, and then she got her own series, which is the Realm Chronicles series.
Wow. Well, that's quite amazing to know, really. And I love your amazing description of To Be a Fake Queen. And I'd like to ask you, what genre is it? And could you please lift the book up if you have a copy there with you? And would you like to talk about the genre? Beautiful cover, really.
Thank you. Yeah, I love this cover. Shower of Smith Designs, and she's in the UK. She did that cover, so I love that. So it's a young adult fantasy, and it's more of an epic fantasy, I would say, because you are set in Middle Earth, and Middle Earth in this series is below our Earth, which they call Upper Earth. It's like physically underneath our dirt or our rock bed that we live on, right? So the Fae can come to our world through these portals that are called fairy rings, and they have crystals that power them. So they can go back and forth, but they don't very often.
Wow.
And really their main goal as fairies is to protect the humans from the evil spirits that are in lower Earth. That's hell or Sheol, right? Of lower Earth. So that's the Fae, I guess, overarching idea is that they need to protect the humans. That's why they were made, I guess, by the creator.
Wow, that's amazing, really. And I love your take on this. Your amazing description as well sounds quite captivating to me. And now you also have another title in the name of Ink, an Incantation, For readers who haven't read that yet, and of course, without giving much information away, could we have a sneak of what we'd expect in terms of themes, picking up ink and incantation?
So Incantation is an anthology, which means it has a lot of short stories from different authors, and they're all
Oh,
fantasy themed books. It's also a young adult book. And I think there are over 20 authors in the book. They all
wow.
wrote short stories with the theme of either magical books or magical libraries.
Wow.
So we all were challenged to write in that theme. My book is, or my story, I should say, is called The
Oh,
Story Weavers. And it's about a young teen who meets a bookshop owner. And when he
oh,
meets the bookshop owner, he has this magical connection and he sees a vision of an old woman dying. And
wow.
he can't really understand why he sees this vision. But then after that, each time he walks by the bookstore, he hears
Yeah.
the old man, or the bookstore owner, the older man's thoughts. And the older man is also writing an author, not an author, but a writer. He's writing a story, and it's a fictional
Wow.
fantasy story. It's medieval set, and so the boy and the man have to figure out why they have this interesting connection.
Wow, that's amazing, really. And I want to particularly say that I love your ideas of this titles, ink and incantation. And it sounds, and this, alongside with all the books that you've got, Kingdom Journals, all the ones have such an amazing, title, one that's very captivating. I love the sound of it. Could you tell us about the making of your Kingdom Journals series as well? Also, what drives your writing?
Right. So the Kingdom Journals, as I said, is kind of a sister series to the Realm Chronicles, and the Kingdom Journals came first. I started it. I wanted to write a vampire series, oddly
Hmm.
enough, because I was obsessed with vampires.
Oh,
But it became a witch series. So the main
wow.
character in the first book, Kingdom of Embers, which I do have that one here. Um,
Yeah.
this is the cover
Kingdom
of
of
Kingdom of
Embers.
Embers, and this is the main character, Alina.
Wow.
She is no, she's 17 years old, I guess, when the story starts, and she is a vampire witch hybrid. And vampires, witch, and witch hybrids are forbidden by the witch lines as well as the vampires. So she has to
Wow.
hide the fact that she's a witch from the vampires, and she doesn't really associate with the witches. But
Wow.
with that challenge, her mother also sends her to human high school, so she has to pretend to be a normal teenager, normal
Oh.
human teenager at high school. So I really wanted to, talk about or give a look at what it looks like to feel different and be different and have to pretend to be someone you're not,
Hmm.
and how that can be really challenging, especially in those teenage years. I think, as adults, sometimes we figure that out and we decide it's not worth it trying to pretend, but I can remember feeling that way
Wow.
when I was in high school. So that was kind of how this book started, but also she is trying to find her heritage and trying to figure out like where she fits in, where she belongs, where she wants to
Hmm.
be. And she discovers that she had an imaginary friend when she was 4, like preschool age,
Wow.
but she sees him in real life and she recognizes him. And he also recognizes her. So they get on this quest to figure out why they knew each other like imaginary friends when they were in
Hmm.
preschool. And they learn that they're a trinity of witches that's supposed to break a curse on the witch line. So they meet each other and then they have to find the third of the trinity and go on this big quest to save the witches. So
Wow.
it's a fun series, and I called it the Kingdom Journals because each one of the witches tell the story through their point of view. So the story continues through
Interesting.
the different witches' points of view. Therefore, the journals part of them.
Very interesting. I love the sound of it. And picking up from what you just said, I'd like to ask you how many books are in this particular King Jonas series? And if you have copies there with you, would you like to show them, say from the book one to the second series to the
So
other
I didn't bring them
ones?
all. I didn't have them all here with me, but there are 4 books in the main series.
Wow.
So each of the 3 witches have their own book, and then a
Wow.
surprise character has his book.
Wow.
So Kingdom of Embers, Kingdom of Darkness, Kingdom of Honor, and Kingdom of War is the finale to
Wow.
the series. And then there's also the Kingdom of the Damned, which tells Alina's mother's story. And Alina's mother is a vampire. She
Oh.
was, my vampires are born, they're not made like other vampires are, but she was born in the 15th century. So it tells her story
Wow.
all the way from the 15th century to the year almost to 1999, I guess.
Wow. That's amazing. I love the sound of that. Now, I'd also like to ask you, you also have a contemporary romance novel in the name of Perfect. Would you like to tell us about what inspired you to write that as well?
Right, sure. Yeah, I genre hop a little bit, as you can tell.
Yeah,
This is Perfect is a
beautiful.
contemporary,
Yeah,
and it's a
perfect.
new adult. It's that new adult age, but it's a clean new adult book. So closed door, fade to black, new adult romance. But so and throughout, like anytime I write a book, it's very character driven. So like with Alina and Titania, they all have challenges that they're trying
Mm,
to overcome. And my romance books tend to be that way as well. So in Perfect, it's more of an alternate ending. What could my life be like if I made different choices along the way? So
mm,
Chloe is the main character, and she starts out in college and she's dating her high school boyfriend. He proposes and she says yes, and everything's magical rainbows, right? So that's part one of the series. And then there are 5 parts. So in the second part, you see her make a different decision. She meets
wow.
a guy named Isaac and she decides, hey, I might like Isaac better than I liked Adam. So that continues her romance with Isaac. And then part 3, 4, and 5 sees her making different decisions. She moves to Paris to go to
Mm,
fashion school. In part 4 and 5, it's set in New York City and different people that she meets based on her different
interesting.
choices in life. So it kind of wanted to depict that, no matter the choices you made or what stage of life you may be in, there's that perfect person out there for you.
Well, I love this. I love your take on this, actually. Sounds quite lovely to know. And now, let's talk about how you come about the inspiration and ideas for writing all of these amazing books that you've got, which is one of the reasons why I'm always intrigued about how novelists, our writers, especially novelists like yourself, craft long sentences, craft long paragraphs that make pages, that make chapters, and that makes an amazing huge novel, interesting one. This always leave me thinking about how excited you just sit there and craft all of this work. Sit there and all these ideas just come and you just compile everything and you got an amazing novel. Now, I'd like to ask you, as far as writing is concerned, how do you get the inspirations and ideas for your books? Where do they come from?
Many different places. Like I said, they're really character driven. So mental illness is a big theme for me. I was anorexic as a young adult, and so my first series, called the Being Me series, was written. It's a fictional account of my experience with anorexia. So
Mm,
I like bringing in themes of healing, recovery, um, just becoming whole as a person and
mm,
acceptance and those type of themes. So I usually have an overarching theme in each of my books. And then, you are able to see the characters overcome their challenges and come to a place of peace and happiness. So that's pretty big for me, and inspiration comes like I saw the picture of the fairy and I was like, oh, that's a cool picture of a fairy. I'll write about a fairy. And it was funny because
yeah,
after I wrote the book, then I started doing research on fairies and realized
yeah.
that I had mostly written them differently than anybody else had written them and not followed the rules of the fairies at all. And I was like, well, that's
Mm,
okay. My fairies have wings. So
that's
a lot of
amazing.
fairies don't have wings, but I learned that later.
That's amazing, actually. I love hearing about this, and it's an amazing thing, actually, to ask authors how they come about the ideas for their books, how they sit down, how they come about crafting all of this, despite knowing that writing sometimes can be very difficult to do. It's an amazing thing how people get inspiration, and that's one of the reasons why I think that writers need more, recognition and more praises for their works. Because this particular job is not an easy one to do, really. It's a lot of work embedded in, writing a book, publishing. We need and we deserve more praise, really.
Right, because you're a poet, correct?
Yeah. So it's an amazing one actually, how people sit there and craft all of these things together. More is what we need, writers need to be praised more for their art. It's an amazing work, really.
Well, I
Yes.
think it really helps to talk to other authors and writers as well, because that, I get excited and inspired when I talk to other people in my craft.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. That's amazing. Now, Tricia, apart from the books we've mentioned thus far, do you have any other works you've authored or maybe currently working on?
Sure. I am currently writing, well, I just published, I wish I had brought that one. I just published Perfect Office Pact, which is the
Oh,
fourth book in the Perfect Romance series. So the first book in the Perfect Romance series is Perfect, and then the second one is Perfect Always. The third one is As Close to Perfect, and the fourth one is Perfect Office Pact. And they
wow.
all highlight different characters within the same friend group. So they try to write multicultural characters too. So Chloe is Vietnamese, Bree is African American,
Mm.
and the next character is Hispanic. And Mira, that's her name, Mira.
Oh,
Mira is Hispanic. So I really try to write multicultural stories too, because that's a lot of my heritage as well. But yeah, so I just published Perfect Office Pact. I'm writing the fourth book in the Realm Chronicles series. That's
wow.
doing a lot of research on different types of beings, like elves and werewolves. So that's a lot of fun.
Wow.
And I also have the two other books that I really love. Azrea is an
Wow.
Aztec mythology book, and so it's
Wow.
about a girl, and this is more middle grade to young adult, so probably as low as fifth grade, I think, in the U.S. at least, like 10-ish up, could read this book. The main character
Wow.
is 12 years old, and she has a mark on her hand, and so her parents give her to a shaman because they think she's some type of evil being. So it was really fun to write, and I worked with an artist on that, and he
Wow.
illustrated. So there's illustrations throughout this book. So that was a lot of fun to do because we kind of wrote the story together, which I'd never done with someone before. Like he came up with the
Wow.
idea for the character, and then I created a story around the character. So these are some of the
Interesting
illustrations.
heart there. Beautiful.
Yeah, so the other book in series is Lovelock. One starts out the Lovelock series,
Yeah.
and this is a dystopian sci-fi book about two teens that are sent to the desert to escape a worldwide pandemic.
Wow.
Surprisingly enough, I wrote it in 2019 before the pandemic, but eerily predictive of the pandemic. So
That's
yeah, and the dystopian series is a YA series as well.
That's amazing. You've got quite a lot of amazing work out there, really. That's quite praiseworthy. That's a lot of work you've got out there. Beautiful titles,
Thanks. Yeah,
even.
I feel a little crazy every time I tell people how many books I've written. So
It's surprising. I'm like, really, you write all of these interesting books? That's amazing, really, Tricia. That's quite
I love it.
commendable.
I love writing. So
That's quite
yeah.
commendable. Well done. Now, could you tell us what publishing is like for a published author like yourself? Are there any challenges you've encountered in the process of writing these books and also ever since it got published? And also, I'd like to ask you too, how do you handle criticism as a writer, especially the negative ones?
Right. So I guess my most challenging thing is the marketing, and maybe every indie author or every author would say this. But yeah, and having to put myself out there, I'm naturally more of an introverted person, and so it takes a lot of energy for me to like get out there and get in front of people and talk to people.
Yeah.
When I go to cons and conferences, standing up all day and talking to everyone all day, I would just come home and crash at night. But it's a lot of fun too. I mean, I get
Yeah.
energy from hearing feedback from readers, and
Mm.
it's always great when it's good. But it's not always going to be good, and I think everybody has to kind of deal with and, come to terms with that. But I kind of
Absolutely.
see it as like, if the right person is reading my book, if it's their
Mm,
right fit book, it's probably, going to be better received. And not like, I
yeah.
don't like all kinds of literature. I don't like horror movies. I don't like horror books. I don't like murders that much. So, I wouldn't read those books. If I read one, I'd be like, oh, it's not that great because I don't like
Wow.
it. But
Wow.
yeah, some people have opinions about point of view. I mostly write in first person point of view. So not everybody likes that point of view. Some people like the third person. So yeah, and everybody's different personality. So that's what I kind of try to do, because I have enough readers that give me good feedback. The ones that maybe didn't like my book as much, I'm like, well, they're not my reader.
Mm,
My book was love everybody to love my book, but not everybody is going to. And that's like an unattainable goal. So I don't, I try not to focus too much on those. I love
yeah.
seeing good reviews, and it's super fun when readers email me and say, oh, I love this book. I connected
That's
with this
amazing.
character. Um, but if they don't, then I just kind of take it and move on. Like a constructive criticism, I guess. Like
Yeah.
some reviewers are very good about saying, I like this part, I didn't like this part. Then I can
Absolutely.
really like self-reflect and say, oh, could I have made that better? Could I have changed
Yeah.
it? Could I change my writing style a
Mm,
little bit, or change how, like Kingdom of Embers, I left it the first time I wrote it, left it on a huge cliffhanger.
wow.
And to me, that's kind of fun. Like, but if it's going to be a year till the next book comes out, then maybe people don't like that very much. So I
That's true.
actually did go back and do an extended finale version of the book that has an extra chapter that you see those characters wrap things up a little bit more than they
Yeah.
did in the original version. So, when I get enough people telling me, "Hey, that was too short. It was just left me hanging. I need something different." Then I say, I can self
Mm,
reflect and change my course a little bit.
wow. That's lovely to know, Tricia. I love your take on this, really. Thank you so much for sharing. English author, what sort of advice do you have for other writers who are still struggling with publishing a book? What would you advise people in this category?
I think you just have to keep writing and keep writing what you love, because if you're not having fun with it, or
Mm,
you're going to have trouble doing it, right? You're not going to be
yeah,
inspired. You're not going to be doing your best work. So, there's a lot of challenges with the marketing and, the feedback you can get back. But if you're really like passionate about it,
yeah,
about a certain topic or about a certain cause, or if you just really love whatever your genre is and writing in that genre, then just keep going. And I've taken, like, I wasn't an English major, I wasn't a writing major. My
mm,
background is in science, so writing was not my first language.
oh,
And I did technical writing for a long time, and so I had to
wow,
transition into write, fiction writing and literature. So I took a lot of courses, and that helped me a lot too.
wow. That's amazing, really. Thank you so much for your advice, and I'm hopeful that viewers, including myself, would love to utilize it. Now, Tricia, in case we have some interested viewers who are currently watching this interview and would love to get a copy of any of your books, on what platform are they available on for purchase?
Right. All the links are on my website, which is Tricia Copeland, TriciaCopeland, TriciaCopeland.com. So all the links are there, but they're all on Amazon, and most of the books are on Kindle Unlimited. The Kingdom Journals and the Realm Chronicles series is also an audiobook format. I have some great narrators, so those were super fun to produce.
That's great. And I left a link in the description part of this interview where interested viewers can get a copy of Tricia Copeland's books directly on Amazon, on our website, and also on other platform. So thank you so much, Tricia, for accepting the invitation to be featured on P English Literature. It's awesome having this conversation with you.
You as well, Peter. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's my pleasure as well. This was fun, really.